I imagine that right now you're feeling a bit like Alice. Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
You could say that.
I can see it in your eyes. You have the look of a man who accepts what he sees because he's expecting to wake up.
Welcome, everybody. This is Team Rabbit Hole edition 314 with Gavin Gerundo, the scavenger. Welcome, everybody.
What up?
Hello, hello.
I guess I knew it already. 314 episodes is pretty cool, but it's also pi. And you got that clock going off in the background doing the circles on the top like that. And I was like, oh, of course. All right. So, yeah, Gavin, episode 314 is sGavinger. Artist, designer, Ashvillian, Aries. Join the team as we get to know Gavin, a creative soul who has traveled around, taken some trips, and discovered his style with a unique take on geometry, color, and atypical canvases. So before we get into the episode, we pull tarot cards in here, and this is actually the namesake of the Starman tarot deck. He's come on a few times, this guy who created this, David DeAngelis. You got the Starman, you got the Magician, basically. So I can't multitask, Jesus Christ. Here, I'll try this. Basically, the Starman, I will blow your mind. It's the alchemist. It's about manifesting your reality. Ideas are communicated and brought into the physical world with ease. You have everything you need to create the world you desire. So I'm kind of curious what resonates on that, even the episode number, pi, whatever, if anything's popping synchronistically for you straight out the gate.
Yeah, I mean, the Magician's kind of something that's a role that I definitely see myself in more. My path with creating art's always been like a balance between, magic and then that, grounded in reality too. And, I've really come to see myself in what I do as, as magic and as alchemy. It is, and understanding alchemy kind of took me a while, but ultimately it's putting pieces together, a combination of simple steps that become greater than the sum of their parts. So really, I mean, what I see with what I do, especially like the transformations and the act of creation, it's an act of magic. So very much, believe that these objects and these paintings that I'm making are, charged. They're objects that are greater than what they physically are.
That makes total sense. I was looking at your chart right before here. You are an Aries sun, but you've got a moon in Pisces conjunct Mercury in 12th house, which might not mean anything to you, but basically, dude, yeah, you're channeling some stuff, and you've got a lot of Capricorn, so you're like here to make it work aesthetically in the world, like make it real, so to speak. So very much channeling kind of the vision, the dream, or something like that, and then be like, okay, now how do I make this in the meat suit now, or whatever, however you'd want to put that. So I don't know you personally, but I turned on to you through Instagram. I think my girlfriend was following you, and she's like, check this shit out. And I was like, what? And then I started following you, and I was like, in my back of my mind, I was like, I got to get this guy on. Reached out to you a little while ago. We've batted this around for a little while, but here we is. So this is all fresh new to me. Beautiful stuff. I'm an art history dropout, so I can really appreciate, what you're doing with the colors and the shapes. Yeah, so to kind of walk us through your life history, you don't have to go starting from single cell necessarily, but you started off in the Midwest, I think, in Ohio.
Yeah, I mean, in the beginning, there was Ohio.
In the beginning, there was Ohio. There's a good justice song called Ohio.
Yeah. Maynard's from there. So
okay. He's also an Aries, I think.
Yeah, it makes sense. Tracks. I mean, the beginning of the art path, I was always kind of artistic growing up in one way, from coloring books, that kind of stuff. My real journey into the art world was in high school. I was doing kind of fashion design stuff. I was doing costume design for my school theater. And so that kind of started the path. And my thing with art was always like, you know, my dad would always say, like, you can be an artist, but I'm not going to pay your bills for the rest of your life. And, you know, little did I know at the time that that wasn't going to be the case, whether I was an engineer, a doctor, or architect, or whatever. So I kind of always tried to justify art with purpose. So yeah, I did the fashion design. I started schooling for fashion design, did that for about a year, and decided just the industry wasn't something that I was interested in. Switched to industrial design schooling, which is like product design, consumer electronics, automobile design, that kind of stuff. So really, like, all my training was in more of like a focused design, like in articulating visual concepts more so than it was like the whimsy and theory and like kind of storytelling concept based art, like you get in a fine art school. So eventually I was basically kind of booted from design school. I had all my projects for the semester, and I decided to go to a music festival, Halloween. And I went there, and then I came back, and my teacher was like, "Oh, you missed enough school days that I get to fail you." And he was stoked on that. You know, I was resentful at the time. Now I'm like, all right, great, part of the path. So I went to, I took a summer off and did a bunch of music festivals and kind of started to get into those professionally. And then went to school for horticulture, kind of studied like permaculture, like city, what's the word for it? Like roof gardening, basically like, you know, engineering plans to work with systems in cities and that nature of stuff. And as I was in school for that, I started doing a lot of live painting at events. So I started with, I would bring leather jackets out to shows. I had one that I painted on with my buddy out in Copenhagen. We were traveling out there and doing the Christiania open market thing and having a good time. Painted a jacket, started getting lots of people commenting on it. So I started to do that at shows. And so, yeah, I'd bring a mannequin and I'd bring leather jackets and I'd be painting on those jackets during concerts. And, you know, that kind of transitioned as I was doing that to more canvases. I was just like, I need a more straightforward, larger canvas to work with. And so I was doing music festivals and pretty regularly, doing a lot of them. I got really into that scene. I'm still, you know, involved in my own way in that world.
I'm wondering if I should stop you here because I've got so many questions, and we can get caught up to the music. It sounds like you're in your, you know, not too far off iteration mode. Just kind of going back real far, and then we can rip back up in. What kind of culture were you raised in? Like, were your parents like, "Hey, open your mind, check everything out," or were they, you know, more religious, or, you know, how are you formated culturally speaking? Because you're obviously pushing the bounds with liminal spaces and color and design in a very psychedelic way. So yeah, I was like, I should probably interrupt him, but I don't want to interrupt him. So yeah, like, tell me a little about growing up in Ohio. I mean, I've lived in Michigan for a year and I hated the Midwest. Although it's beautiful in its own forested way, it's like, I don't know, I'm from the East Coast, Colorado, all that kind of place, Hawaii. So tell us a little about growing up and culture, and maybe how you were. I've seen your costuming, I guess is maybe a strong word, but it's like some of your outfits on Instagram, and I was like, he either is into Comic-Con or he knows how to tailor or something, because it was like, not gaudy, that's not really the right word, but it was like theatrical. I mean, yeah, exactly. So shoving back a little, I know you're at, like, I went to shows and I painting the jackets, which there's like a whole scene of this, like rock concert jackets, just like a whole subculture. I forget what the word is called, but it's a big deal, like in metal groups and stuff like that. Anyway,
well,
yeah,
generally live painting, visionary artists do this.
Oh, that too, totally, yeah, separate vein. But like, first, I don't know if it's recent or if it's ever since the 80s and stuff. I've seen like a Celine Dion as a demon kind of thing, like painted. Maybe it's not painted, but like designed. And people go all out with these like super custom jackets at like hardcore shows and stuff. I don't go to that's not my scene, but I've seen it. So anyway, I'm gonna shut the fuck up now. Tell us a little about Ohio and maybe the cultural like petri dish you flowered in.
Yeah, so I was kind of born and raised in New Richmond, Ohio, which is about 45 minutes east of Cincinnati. Very country for sure. You know, I grew up on 10 acres out in the woods. Went to a very country, you know, grade school. My dad was a pilot for Delta. My mom was a stay-at-home mom through most of my raising, and so yeah, I wasn't raised religious or anything like that. That was never really in my sphere until my mom got into like non-denominational Christianity a little later. My dad was always like on the more atheist side of things, but you know, through him being a pilot, I was able to travel a lot, and that's really, I think, what, you know, that was the biggest expander of my mind. You know, from a young age, traveling to places, And it's, still something that's huge for me. A big thing we do, like, we traveling to the Middle East was one of the best parts, like as far as opening my mind and stuff. But we'd always travel, and of course, when you're doing tourist stuff, you're seeing all these temples and like obsessed with temple.
I was going to ask if it was like domestic flights, like, oh, we're going to Panama City for the weekend or something. But geez, you went to the Middle East. What the heck? And did you read Hatchet as a kid? I don't know if you know that book. For some reason, I was like, you seem like somebody who might have read that. If your dad's a pilot and you're in the countryside, like maybe some self-reliant.
So let me know what you learn in the Middle East. Only, I mean, I guess you've been to many different places, but what was particular about that, for example, or other places as well?
So the Middle East, the way we could stand by, or the way we could travel with my dad being a pilot, was standby. So it's like if there's open seats on the plane, you can hop on, you just pay like the taxes for the flight essentially. So after 9/11, nobody was really flying to the Middle East. And, my dad had been out there a few times. So he was like, all right, let's hop on, let's go check it out. So, granted, we were traveling as a, nuclear family, which is one of the more outwardly acceptable things. But we went to like Istanbul and Jordan were the real standouts for me. And, especially with that era of just all the kind of like essentially propaganda about the Middle East and how, these people all want us to die and yada, yada. And then going over there and, communicating with these people and seeing just how excited and happy and welcoming they were to have people who were interested in actually learning about their culture rather than just, listening to what the grander media or whatever was saying about it. And there's that side. And then also just the mosque architecture out there, absolutely unreal. And it's a cool one for me in particular because they were one of the only societies that really like doesn't have a proven link to psychedelics. Like a lot of places have some sort of connection, and these people don't. And this is something I tap to with my art. Like I have definitely a huge experience with psychedelics and everything. Have gone down the rabbit hole on that one. But this one, and kind of what my mission is, I was kind of at a get the message, hang up the phone point. And it's really cool to me how they were able to tap into this same God consciousness in a different way, where it's like reaching that state of psychedelia from baseline humanity, from that state. There's, that side of it with these mosques with just infinitely complex geometry, just spaces of power. And then like seeing Petra was unreal, amazing, just charged spaces, and that's really informed my art. It's like every
people don't know Petra is the city in Indiana Jones: The Last Crusade, basically, right in the wall. I mean, Petra means rock and whatever back in the day. So yeah, I have not been to Istanbul. I've heard it's like the cat capital of the world. They got cats everywhere. It's pretty chill, kind of bohemian. I think it's almost like a Paris of the Middle East, essentially. Basically, it's right in that gap. Constantinople originally, and then Istanbul and all this stuff. That's crazy. So I went to Florida and Disney World and stuff during the 9/11 kind of like it's BOGO kind of, or whatever, like you're saying, kind of ground score, let's go. So I get it. But we didn't go that far, so that's pretty cool. So what about Jordan? I don't even know much about it. Like what popped off there in your mind that made you remember it? So
I mean, Jordan in particular is Petra was the main experience from there. It was that, and then the Dead Sea was incredibly cool. But just like the culture in general, it was just very very welcoming and open. People were happy from downtown to these cultural historic sites. It was just very very welcoming people. I mean, really one of the most welcoming places I've ever been.
I'm guessing your pre-flight versus like post-trip was totally different. Like pre on the front end because of the propaganda and all this stuff going on in the zeitgeist. I'm sure you're like, "What the fuck? I'm gonna die," or maybe. And now when you got there, they're like, "Oh, this isn't that bad." It's funny because they obviously Islam has kind of strict rules around drinking. I don't know so much about psychedelics. I think hash is allowed, more or less, but like you were saying, they get to a certain level of awareness through geometry specifically. Not that the West didn't do that in cathedrals and certain things post-Renaissance largely. But they were jamming pretty hard at one point well before the West, which is kind of counterintuitive when people think of, the Middle East now. They think of like, I don't even know, Wahhabism or whatever, like just crazy stuff because of the cultural news narrative stuff. Not that Wahhabism is like the most small sect of it. I don't even know why I said that, but you get my point. They don't think of like the burgeoning part of the culture, whereas at one point, like whether it's astrology or art or science, even like they were really on the cutting edge for a long time. So fascinating that you got to go there. All right, so what drew you to theater? I mean, were you like, I want to act, or are you more into the behind the scenes design stuff? That's obviously what you did, but were you like running around like Puck or whatever also, or how'd that work?
Yeah, I mean, I was never like a theater actor kid, really. I mean, I think I did a few in my younger, school programs and stuff. Really, it was just a creative outlet. I think, fashion's always kind of something I've been interested in, despite wearing a t-shirt today. But just it's one of the most active forms of art, because it's art that we choose in our everyday life. It's how we like represent ourselves. It's how we put ourselves out in the world.
That makes sense. Looking at your chart, you have Jupiter and Libra, opposite your Venus and Aries. So in a weird way, in a 6th house, Jupiter Libra. So it's like you are really very much about the practical beauty of things, the grounded, embodied praxis of things. Sometimes though, I have a feeling you're like, because you got a lot of squares, you got like a big old square on your chart. So it's like you might feel a little unlucky at times. You're like, I want to be my most authentic self, and it's so raw, it's gonna upset the cart a little. I got to be careful. Like that kind of inner tension. I don't know. I'm projecting now onto my astrologer mode. But all right. So what you got out of high school, you said, all right, I want to fuck around with the art stuff, and you went to design school. And like you said, it was not quite the design is more practical, obviously. So it's like, here we need to make a cover for the phone book or stuff like that. Like this chair needs to be fit human body spaces, as opposed to like let's just do acid and draw on the ceiling kind of stuff. Maybe like you were saying, of a fine art school is typically
We
more
can
not
do that
poetic.
too.
Well, you could do both, like because I know Pink Floyd and the Talking Heads and a lot of artists that I love a lot came from design schools, so they were very much imbued in the practical, methodical, really kind of side of the engineering side of art.
Did you actually work in terms of doing industrial art or industrial art design, like specific projects for companies as well, or you managed to, I almost want to say, take the other route even before getting into that particular
Yeah,
field?
I took the other route. I mean, actually, now I have a clothing company that I work with. I have like a clothing line out, and I have obviously like product oriented stuff, and I'm very into like getting more and more into like the fabrication and tech side of things. Yeah, I mean, I've never really had a professional job within those worlds. Yeah, these are the clothes I make with my culture. So a lot of
Festival
clothes
friendly.
where it's integrating, and it's not just, we started with a lot of just kind of putting the painting on the item of clothes itself,
Like
but
a
now it's
transfer.
gotten into a much more pattern oriented, trying to take those like deeply psychedelic clothes from festival culture and just making them a little bit more approachable, as much as they are very loud clothing. It's
Well, you are an Aries with a Venus and Aries, so it's you don't mind being loud and
Well, then
kind of
let me just
fiery.
ask, since you mentioned that word, what would that mean in this case? Because I'm aware of like psychedelic type clothing, apparently. But what would you say? How do you make them more approachable? I'm curious. Like, what would be the changes in the design philosophy or guidelines that you apply, like in your mind?
I think it would be more simplicity. It's like if you just put a painting on a T-shirt, it's like it's not made for that. So it's not something that reads as a cohesive piece, something that would have like design semblance or like proportions. Like the proportions of a painting are made for a canvas and for a painting, versus clothing. It's like you've got to work with the way it lays on the body, and you want to make stuff that's flattering. You want to also make stuff that's more accessible. And I think that's really a big part of what design school taught me. The skills that it taught me is how to, like fine arts, like just create from your brain, but then designs focusing on like the user experience, how people interact with it, what these like rules and principles are that make stuff things that people are visually drawn to. It's like it's the rules of art is what design is essentially.
That makes sense. I mean, like Van Gogh's Starry Night or something is dope as a painting, and then you put it on, and it's like I don't know if it translates exactly 100. So and it's funny because I have seen a lot of artists. We've had Sam Fran and Android Jones and people like that on here. Rena Monet, she's transferred her art to clothes, And like you're saying, I mean, I never really thought about it because I'm not on that front line of application like that. But something, what you're just saying, I don't even have to recapitulate it. Basically, it's like some things don't go as quite user end friendly as you might presuppose, and it just sometimes looks like copy paste, like, and it's just like, okay, well, that's fine. I mean, it works, but it's not like awesome. Even this shirt I'm wearing, I got from Target back like 10 years ago, maybe more, and it's a schematic. I mean, you can't really tell, but it's a schematic of the Millennium Falcon. I don't think if you, whatever, t-shirts are fine and cool and stuff, and so you can get art on there, but I don't even know where I'm going with this. The point is, yes, I understand the transferability kind of what you're saying with your work. So was there, I mean, I don't know why I'm thinking of like Peter Gabriel. I'm not sure if you're into him or not back in the day with Genesis, but kind of the theatrical side of things. What kind of, were you making costumes for the whole crew? Like, I mean, that's a whole laborious thing. I'm like, what were your tasks in the high school / college kind of era of the theater stuff? I know I'm going back a little, but I'm just thinking this has a lot more to do with like maybe part of how you approach reality in terms of a theatric living art modality.
All the world is a stage.
yeah, there you go. Yeah, more. I mean, it seems like you're naturally dipping into that even just with your hobbies and preferences, as opposed to like having to put on the thinking cap and say, maybe I'm an actor and I'm playing a role. Like, you understand kind of like theatrics, or I can't think of a better word right now.
Yeah, I mean, to quote RuPaul, we're all born naked and the rest is drag.
Okay.
You know, everything we wear, it's an act of drag. It's how we, you know, how we portray ourselves. It's how we put ourselves out in the world. As far as what I was making for the theater, it was all like costume design. So there were, you know, I did a couple of them. The one that really stands out is Phantom of the Opera. And so that was, you know, that was making ball gowns. So that was something that was like very gaudy, extravagant, you know, crazy materials, lots of tulle, lots of volume, and just very theatric in that.
That's what's up. I haven't seen, I mean, I've watched it actually on L once. My brother's like, I don't even have to, we reverse candy flipped, and it's a long story. Then basically it was like terrible because I can't even explain it. We went to see Marvel or something like that, and we came home and I was like, well, let's eat us. And we just rolled to that. And then it was like coming down. It was just a bad idea. The order of operations there. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm feeling like a hangover. Anyway, we watched Phantom of the Opera. He's obsessed with it. And there's one line from that that's like far too many notes about, for my taste, they're about this girl named Christine who's like this obsessive kind of guy. I'm into Les Miserables and shit like that. So I get theater to a degree, but Phantom of the Opera, I know it, like, your gaudy is a strong word, but big. It's a big kind of time period piece thing. All right, so what are the highs and lows in essentially of design school? I mean, Arcade Fire has a lyric where it's like, you know, we go to this school, I forget the lyric exactly, I'm gonna butcher it, so I shouldn't even try, but basically it's like, you know, it's hard, art school's hard and they're gonna bleed us dry and it's crazy, and our ideals are being crushed and we're just getting minced up into the Pink Floyd The Wall machine, kind of, even as a creative. And like you said, you got booted for going and having a fun time. So yeah, what were the highlights and lowlights? Maybe like, was it disillusioning and just being like, shit, like I'm not the only, you know, the big fish in the sea here? Or how did that feel essentially?
You know, it was, and I think design school is a bit different than fine art school. You know, I think fine art school is the soul killer of the art world for sure. Just being so conceptual driven, that kind of stuff. You know, design school was amazing for me because it was all very, very, very practical stuff. You know, it was repetitive. It was a lot of work. I mean, as far as like my design foundations, which are the best things that I pulled out of there, that class, you know, we started, the first assignment was to take a piece of paper and draw 100 parallel lines, which, you know, you get that at first and you're like, I can't draw like a straight line. Like there's no way, you know, so it's going from that. And then you're like, oh, I can draw a straight line. And you learn about, you know, how to do that and the methods behind that. And then it's like, okay, now your next homework is to draw 100 shaded spheres, 100 shaded cubes, 100 shaded pyramids. You know, it's essentially going through the Platonic solids and shading those, you know, just drawing and shading those. And then, you know, it comes to, all right, so now we know these shapes. So now let's, I think it was actually in tandem with that we did this, but we took, you know, paper and we made templates for each of those Platonic solids. And so then we had the physical representation. And I think, you know, design school gives you a really good understanding of like the practical side of art. You know, it's rendering form, shape, how light bounces off of things, which obviously that kind of stuff informed my painting a lot more ultimately it's all conglomerated, and now the furniture is what I'm really focusing on. But even with the furniture, it's about using design principles and color to move the eye, to focus the eye. So I mean, that's the takeaways were like the really practical, art knowledge that I learned from it, versus, I mean, the negatives were really just, it was a little difficult for me as far as like structure. I've never really been, I mean,
You're kind of a free spirit.
I'm kind of a free spirit. I mean, I'm so regimented and I stay on top of my stuff pretty well. I have a lot of different moving parts at the same time. But for me, like the way I thrive now is, 100 moving parts at the same time. And I'm kind of bouncing between, as opposed to, all right, this project, do this, and that was ultimately why I was, kicked out, for lack of a better term, failed in that course, was because I had, I'd already done all my projects for that entire semester. They were done like a month ahead of time. So I was like, all right, I'm bouncing. I'm going to go to this. Why do I need to go to class anymore if we're just coming in and working on our projects? I'm like, I've already worked on my projects.
I'm ahead of the curve. Get off my case.
It wasn't right for me at the time. And, there were certain things that, like CAD, that was the thing when we were kind of towards the tail end of when I was in there, we were learning CAD, and I was like, I don't really care about this. Now
I'm like drafting technology.
It's like drafting technology. Yeah. Like 3D modeling software, essentially.
Well, it makes sense now with 3D printers and all this.
Oh my God. I wish I had stuck around a little bit longer for that.
You can't win them all, man. You can't win them all. So It's funny. The Foo Fighters have an album called The Color of the Shape. And when you're talking about this, it reminds me of that a little, where, you're getting into the nitty gritty of the design element. And it's a unique take. And it's focusing so much on line. Not everybody does that with visionary art. I feel like this is holding a level of form that is atypical, dare I say. So, all right, you get kicked out or whatever, and you said you were at Halloween. I haven't gone to but one festival, but I'm right now in Alabama, and I know that's nearby in Florida. So maybe I'll go this year to Halloween. I don't know, but yeah. So, what kind of music you into? Like, obviously, if you're going to that for fun, more raves or jam bands or all the above.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of started more in like the bass dubstep scene in like 2009, 2010.
Like Scream. You remember
a Scream? Yeah. I mean, before
stuff.
that it was metal. I was big in metal. Still am in my own way. Still into a lot of the genres that I was in. But I was in a screamo band in high school. Loved that. That was all about
how Ohioan of you. I feel like that's a Midwest contribution. It's like, we're going to scream at the gray clouds.
Yeah, cut my wrists and black my eyes.
My gosh. Well, My Chemical Romance is cool, but they're not really screamo. See, it gets tricky.
They're the subgenres out of control.
Oh God. Okay. Yeah. So you're into what kind of, when you say metal, I mean, that's a broad thing. What, name some bands that you're always about?
I mean, metalcore back in the day was really like August Burns Red, Devil Wears Prada. What's the one? Enter Shikari. I still fuck with Enter Shikari. They're great. They're a UK band. But then, Tool is one that's like, I love Tool. They've been kind of a constant through everything. Just their concepts. I think of more of I suppose I was into like metalcore to narrow it down. And it just, it's a little bit like teen angst kind of stuff that I was just going through. And then it was that. And then it was also the culture, which, like, metal has always had a vibrant culture. And I think that's kind of what led me to fall so much into the festival scene, doing the dubstep, which is, again, just like metal. It's that high energy, feeling that sense of wonder, awe, exuberance from the crowd. So then that led me to jam band kind of stuff, which was a little bit more in my, now I've eaten acid, I'm going to experience love and light for a little bit and fall into that kind of thing. And now it's, now really, I mean, the way the scene's evolving is like the jam band stuff is definitely slowing down, and things are moving way more towards this like psychedelic experimental bass kind of stuff. So that's like, I produce a festival in Ohio, and that's kind of what that is leaning towards. We have some jam band stuff, but that's what the kids are interested in, the people who are still going out and active in the music scene.
I mean, I know you're a hustler. You got a whole lot of Capricorn. I didn't realize you ran a fucking festival. What's that called?
Yeah, it's Secret Dreams Music and Arts Festival. So yeah, it's my shirt. It's
but of course, there it is.
Yeah,
that's steezy. I like this. I like the font. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, it's our 4th year. I've been there since the beginning. I came on kind of like as an art program director, and now I've kind of just expanded the program really and gotten more and more involved. So now I'm the creative producer of that event. So I do the creative program is what we call it, but it's live painters. We'll have about 50 to 100 live painters working on canvases. We'll have 30 live
painters.
Yeah,
that's a gaggle, dude. That's 50 is a lot. I haven't been to a live show in so long that I don't even know. Like, I feel like 1 or 2 is a lot, not a lot, but like normal. But like 50 is a whole section.
Yeah, it's and that's really a scene that inspired me to really get into art too, and that's kind of what I started seeing, and I was like, oh, this is the kind of art I want to make. I'd never seen that kind of art really, aside from like Alex Gray, kind of like one of the more mainstream psychedelic artists. And yeah, I mean, it was something so cool to see that for me, because I was not only seeing like these amazing finished pieces, but also seeing like the process that goes behind them. It's kind of like a unique thing for the for just art in the context of history in general, is that there's never really been. It's always been about the finished product. It's been something that's kind of been inaccessible for people. And so now it's like you can get drawn into the creative process. And I mean, that's, it inspired me. And now it's like we have this huge program. So hopefully it inspires others to create.
It's like a little fractal tendril. I mean, it's like plein air in the sense that you're in the elements of life. You're not just like in a studio, raging on your thing for, whatever, Sistine Chapel style or whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would think that it is. Well, I don't know. I'm sure like cave paintings, maybe back in the day, they were doing some interactive stuff. I'm sure it's been touched on, but not en masse, and definitely with the level of production and cultural engagement with festivals and concerts in general now, it probably is its own thing. I'm gonna go to a concert again. Last time you were talking about Alex Gray, I saw him live paint the first time I ever, and I haven't done it many times. The first time I ever rolled at a Disco Biscuits concert up in New York somewhere, and he was on stage doing stuff, and I was just like, wow, this is interesting. I mean, that was like a long time ago. Like,
yeah, with the I didn't know that intersection happened. Disco Biscuits and Alex Gray.
A long time ago. I mean, I think it was 2007. I could be wrong on that, but like a long time ago. Yeah. So yeah, so let's talk a little about, I mean, you're in Asheville, and have you been there long? I know when I was talking to you at one point, you're like, I'm crossing the country, I could do this from a hotel, whatever. I was like, no, don't do that. And I actually did see a picture on your Instagram of, I guess, a state trooper or something, looking at your clock, I guess, one of your works. Tell us a little about that story. I mean, were you like pulled over and you were just like, I'm just shipping this thing, like Easy Rider style? Like, what happened?
Yeah, I mean, I was crossing the country, and I just, going from Asheville to Salt Lake City, and I, was making my way along, and stopped in Fort Collins, where a good friend of mine lives, and I
lived there for a long time in Colorado. I grew weed up at Horsetooth Reservoir. I lived up in the lake or whatever. If you go up there, FOCO is awesome. I'm glad you saw it. Like, people go to Colorado. Denver's fine and Boulder's fine, but like FOCO is way cooler, I think.
I decided I was skipping Denver. I was like, I don't even want to stop there. I want to go to Fort Collins, and I was like, oh shit, one of my she's actually one of the like kind of co-producers of the event I do, and one of my longest friends. So I was like, oh, she lives there. Let me stop. So
what's her name? I might know her.
Sarah Yule. Sarita Yule.
Shout out Sarah. No, I don't know Sarah.
Sarah,
yeah. FOCO all day. All right, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but you're like, Fort Collins. I'm like, I know that. I know that spot.
Yeah, so they had a nice little weed operation going on, because you can do that there. And so, I'm leave there after 2 days, and I'm going across the border into Wyoming, and I'm like on calls and just kind of not paying attention. I'm not really like, I never speed, especially when I'm traveling. So like, I was speeding though, I was going like 17 over or whatever.
17 over. Yeah, the guy it's intent to kill at some point.
Yeah, geez, I'm glad it wasn't 20.
Right.
The guy pulls me over. I'm sure my rights were infringed upon in its own way, but he's like, I need you to get out of the car. And so he pulls me out and gets me in the side seat of his car. He's like, hey, so he's a canine officer. He's like, hey, my dog smells your car. He's like, how much weed's in the car? I'm like, I don't have any weed. I haven't been smoking weed for almost a year now. But I smelled like weed. I was like, oh, well, this makes sense. I was, staying at my friend's house, and I was like staying next to a grow.
It's pungent. Yeah, 1,000%.
Yeah, I'm sure it was pungent. So he, he's like, all right, well, my dog, smells it on you right now. So I'm going to, I have probable cause, whatever. So he's, searches me, doesn't find anything. He goes to my car and he starts looking through all my baggage, all that stuff. And let's see him. He calls backup immediately when he looks in and sees the clock. And
this kid's an acid head, clearly.
Oh my God,
clearly needs backup when you find something like this in the trunk. I mean, what a joke.
Oh, sacred art. Let's get more guys.
Yeah, so they they search through all the stuff in my car, and then they're like starting to move the clock around, and I'm like, I like lean out the window. I'm like, hey, this is this is what I'm like, I'm delivering this to a client, and this is worth X amount of dollars, so don't mess with that.
Yeah.
And so they're like, all right, because they were sliding it, and I was like, whoa, like lift,
chip the paint,
and move. And so then they're like lifting and moving. I can tell they want to look under the seat and under the trunk and everything. So I'm like, hey, if you're gonna move this, like, let me help you. And they're like, all right. They hadn't found anything at that point. So my story was checking out. So yeah, we lifted up, and I'm like, telling this officer how to get it out safely, get it stood up on the highway. They finished their search, and I'm just like kind of sitting there, and like my clock is just like on the middle of this highway in the middle of the Wyoming desert. Like I'm just like,
cool picture. I thought it was Northern Colorado. Yeah.
And I think the guy felt kind of bad at that point because I'd been out there for like 45 minutes.
It's clearly harassment after a minute.
Yeah. And so I'm just like, hey, fucking,
I gotta go. Yeah.
I need a picture with you. Like, will you take a picture? So the backup that he called took a picture of us, and I was like, this is fucking gold.
It is.
And so, it's pulled off at the next, after they let me go. He just gave me a warning too. He didn't actually give me a speeding ticket, which is rad.
That's what's up. I bet he'll never forget you. He's like, who's that hippie with the clock or whatever?
And just to be clear, because I don't know all the details with like differing state laws at that time. I guess it was a year or two ago.
Couple months.
But, all right,
it was right when I asked him to come on. He's like, I'm doing.
Would it technically have been illegal for you to have it in your car if it's allowed to be growing, or have you been in another state already and that's why? Just so I can put it together.
So it
like
would have
Colorado's
been
hip, but Wyoming might not be as hip. I don't think.
Wyoming is very unhip.
Yeah.
And they were, that first hour of driving into Wyoming, I probably saw 100 cop cars in the first hour.
It's like a ducks or a fish in a barrel for them. They're like, all right.
It was 420 weekend too, so they're like, 420 right on the Colorado border. It's like you can do anything in Colorado. They even have like mushrooms legalized out there. Nice. But yeah, once you cross that border, it's it's legal, and they actually have like if you get caught with anything, it's a like mandatory minimum of I think a year of reporting probation. So thank God, because I mean, if it was a year ago or any point a year ago before, I'd have been cruising down the highway with a joint in my mouth, like. I would drive across country with, just smoking weed, just kind of being in the wind.
Yeah. Serendipitous, to say the least. Of all the times to be dry, I guess it worked out. So, somebody had asked.
Since someone just commented, so someone's asking, any more shows? Your work has been represented all over the world with notable upcoming showings at Alex Gray's Chapel of Sacred Mirrors in New York. What should we be looking for next?
Well, that's the end of the episode, but we can do that now too.
Yeah. I mean, so I've got, as far as upcoming stuff, I am going to Electric Forest Festival in Rothbury, Michigan. We just got the okay to announce that. So I guess, hey, we're announcing that.
Official.
So I'll be in the art gallery and live painting there. And then after that, I will be at my festival, Secret Dreams Music and Arts Festival, which is in Columbus, Ohio, July 17th and 19th.
Okay.
After that, I am going to, I think my next show after that is in Monaco in September. So I'll be flying out to Monaco. One of my first international shows, bringing a bunch of blocks.
That's sick. It's like the casino James Bond town, right?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. After that, I've got a show in Madrid. I've got a show in Innsbruck, Austria. And then I have Art Basel in December in Miami, Florida. So that's kind of
those are big fucking things. I mean,
I've been working really, I've been in the festival world and doing that and kind of getting to the top of my game in there. And now I'm
dues or whatever. You're there. Dude,
Yeah,
Art
so
Basil's a big deal. This
for
shit
sure.
will pop at Art Basel. Like people are
That
gonna be like, heck yeah.
sounds very high profile. Have you ever considered or been invited to like Boom or Ozora? Because these are like the biggest,
Yeah.
psychedelic tribal, or what do they call them? Tribal gathering. Have to use the right words, right? Have you been there? Because I know there's many artists there as well.
Boom is really, really high on my list. It's really one of the only festivals that I haven't done yet that I want to. And it's the same week. It's because it's like a week-long event, but it's the same time as the festival that I produce. So
Priorities.
it's
I got
and I'm hoping either because I'm not I'm in the creative side of my festival, so I don't choose the dates and that sort of stuff. But I'm hoping that one of the festivals changes their dates one of these days so I can do that.
If they have like a little comment suggestion box, be like, hey, make it
Please.
in a little earlier or a little later. Okay, so let's talk a little about festival life. I mean, you're obviously very active on it. I've only been to one. Ironically, through Facebook, I had somebody like I do tarot cards every morning, and somebody watched it and they were like, here, I'll give you a volunteer position if you want to come out to this thing on Orcas Island called Imagine. This is in
Oh,
like
yeah.
2018, I think. And that's the only festival I've ever been to in a real sense. I guess my brother used to play the drums for the Magic Beans, so he did
Okay.
Beanstalk at one point.
Yeah.
Actually, it's funny, the pigeon playing ping pong guys,
Yep.
or I think them. We were in some little band with them for a gig or two. My brother was on drums. I played guitar. The bass player from Pigeons, and then the piano player. I'm forgetting what he like. Oh God, he's gonna hate me. I'm forgetting his name now, even. But he's a Denver guy. He's cool. Really cool guy. Anyway, the point is, tell us a little about festivals, because my experience is not typical. It was weird, and like I don't have to go down my anecdotes on that. Fun, pleasant, and interesting, but being a volunteer was just very different dynamic. I got to trip last night, but it was very much like hands-on working. Like I wasn't like just stoned. Actually, I was stoned the whole time. But the point is, it was working. So what how did you get into festivals? What was your first festival? Like obviously,
actually I did Beanstalk I think like 2017 or 18. Yeah,
that might have been the year my brother did it. I'm trying to
windy.
think.
I remember it was windy, and there's a whole story there for sure.
I think maybe that was
I
the
don't
year.
anyone actually. I'll go into that story a little bit because I like set up. They didn't really have an art program, and I was like, hey, I wanted to come set one up. So I set up like a 10 by 20 canopy up right by the main stage. Had a bunch of originals in it. Was live painting and stuff, and it was on top of a mountain, very windy. My EZF essentially folded over itself over all of the original paintings, and so I no longer had my own little art gallery set up. But that was an interesting experience for
The
sure
wind
on that
cries
one.
merry, as they say.
Oh my God.
Well, okay, yeah, you can't win them all. That's the
Yeah,
harder part. Festival life is like the front line of music. It's like
truly is.
you are in the trenches here,
Yeah.
up to the elements and all that stuff. So that okay. What were some of the first? I mean, I think you've been going to concerts for a long time. Obviously, you've been in music and stuff. But like, what were some of the major times where you're like, I'm going to this, and
Yeah.
life changing is a strong word, but whatever.
Totally. The first one I ever did, first like full on immersive music festival, well, Warped Tour, very different, but
Oh yeah,
first
I used
one
to
I did.
skate. That's cool.
I did so I was at my weed dealer's house when I was probably 17, 18, and he was like, you gotta check out this Electric Forest Festival. And it was the first year of that, so that was 2011. So I went to that festival, completely blew my mind wide open. Just seeing all
Beautiful.
the
People don't know. They need to look it up. It's cool.
Oh yeah, Electric Forest is one of the best for sure. So I did that, and that was the only one I did that year. And I was like, next year I was like, all right, let's go on this. And so I did Electric Forest again that year, and then I did Workout Music Festival at Legend Valley, Ohio, and 2011. That was the first year for that. 2012 I went to Workout, which was one of the first like smaller festivals, I guess. That I did, but they had, it was just a lot more of like Electric Forest is like you're immersed in this huge, amazing world of art, color, sound, psychedelic culture. Workout was a little bit more of like a, not to say that Forest isn't like a family feel, but it was just like a very small grassroots kind of production. And that's what really kind of spurred me getting heavily involved with music festivals. And, that was one workout that I think I did it 8 or 9 times. The people who throw that are the people that I, co-produced my festival with now. So it's really that world is what I've gotten sucked into from there. Another important one was Rootwire Festival. So
I've
this
heard of
band,
that.
Papadozio,
Mhm.
they throw that festival. They're, I've seen over 400 shows of theirs now, toured with them. I make all their poster art now. Lots of full circle moments in that world, And that was the first festival where they had huge amount of live painting that I'd seen. So they had, they had little podiums built for painters. They had a live mural on stage. We had like Amanda Sage, Chris Dyer, Randall Roberts. We had all those like big cats that I was just introduced to there. And just seeing that like really live creation aspect really was like, I want to do this, like this is the world. I'd never seen the art that I really wanted to make. That was what really like opened me up to that side of things. And yeah, I mean, those were absolutely pivotal. I started, I started painting at events with the jackets. That was where I started, and it, compounded and compounded, and I did a lot. And it's yeah, I mean, like that really peaked in 2023 was when that was really like, all right, this is it, this is the year. And I painted at so many festivals, like all the big ones. Lightning in a Bottle. I showed work at there's one in BC that's a really good one. I can't think of the name right now. That one. I live painted at Burning Man. I did just everything. I did 40 events that year and was just like, hit it so hard. And I had about a year and a half hangover from all that.
I can imagine. I've never
yeah.
been to Burning Man. I mean, it's probably changed a lot in the years, as do all these festivals. I'm sure the first
Yeah.
Electric Forest is like this. I mean, it's fine. It is what it is. Gentrification is too strong a word. I've said that like 6 times in this podcast. This is too strong a word. This is too strong a word. Mercury is conjunct the sun, so maybe I'm very cognizant of my language right now. But anyway,
just before we go on, and how should I say, in the most
Shambhala.
positive and investigative sense, but since we're on Team Rabbit Hole, so Amor pointed out, basically saying, now the government's using this to manipulate people. I'm not sure how aware you are with Woodstock, the original one. From what I understand, even this was kind of a military op. I definitely enjoy festivals, but we had talks, for example, with Stellium 7, who is really critical, investigating these things, and then considering all the sides of festivals. What is your impression? Would you say your experience has always been positive? How do you see it like as a wider cultural thing?
Like Travis Scott comes to mind or something like that. Where it's like, oh my god.
I think the world that I've stayed in with the festivals is not on like the huge side of things, like your like EDC and Coachella and Bonnaroo. I mean, Bonnaroo is kind of the closest to the scale that I would do. I've typically stayed with events that are like 2,500 people up to like 20,000 is kind of the sweet spot. 20,000 is like a lot of energy. I think those are the more grassroots ones versus like the really corporate ones, which sometimes are amazing. Like Coachella, I kind of wish I was there this past year. Just, I mean, I have a scope. I'm sure there's all sorts of crazy shit happening there, but you get to see the theatrics there. Like, I've never been like a huge Lady Gaga stan or anything, but seeing her performance from that was like really, it touched on, it was just a theatrical, truly like theatrical, amazing, high production value thing, which is the cool side of those bigger festivals is they have the production value, but there's some people that maybe shouldn't, get that platform. I'm sure every sort of platform like that has its level of, people manipulating it to affect culture. But I mean, I think ultimately the ones that I do are pretty, I try and stick with the ones that have those more positive grassroots ethos than like, Live Nation, fuck Live Nation. They're horrible people. But
We don't have to get into politics, but I'm pretty sure at some point Kid Rock was talking to Trump, I feel, on the news about taking down Live Nation, and my girlfriend and I were like, hell yeah, because music is not affordable anymore. I mean, that's part of the problem. It's all, you can go to like maybe, I mean, normal plebeians like me are like, all right, a festival or something. It's not like I can just go. So it's become really, I mean, if you look at concert tickets, even Woodstock, even if it was a huge psyop or something, and I'm not even saying it isn't, because in a sense, what's not a psyop, Raphael, but like the Grateful Dead is supposed to be a CIA thing, but they still made dope shit and had a huge counterculture, and Terrence McKenna and all that stuff. You see pictures of Woodstock with people being like, acid for like $1 or whatever, which I guess actually maybe it was a penny. I don't know. I was like, that doesn't make any sense because it's not that much more now. But yeah, it's one of these things where just the scale of late stage capitalism is it bleeds into any kind of facet of our world, including idealistic, because you have a North Node in Sagittarius, so you're like all about truth and experience and ride the I'm the Lizard King kind of mode. Sagittarians are, you know, the cheerleader of the highest fire. So that's where you got to be going. So in your Dharma, if you want to put it that way. So the fact that you're a part of like transformational culture is maybe the good way to put it. It has its light side and its dark side, and it gets tricky, like Raphael's alluding to, because one does not necessarily know all the presuppositions or, you know, or what's going on. I mean, I don't know what's coming to mind, but like the movie Pet Cemetery, where it's like, this is built on an Indian burial ground, and like all sorts of weird happenstance from that. I have a feeling there's probably a lot more engineering and imagineering in like a dark way than one might assume with these things, just because it's people and energy and loosh and all this kind of stuff, right? It's like, hey, let's have fun with that. I know that's a little conspiratorial. I don't even know if you're into conspiracies. I just know your clocks, for God's sake. Like, I don't know. Like, I don't think you're a flat earther or anything like that. But do you have any? I mean, it sounds like you kind of addressed it. Even Lady Gaga is getting into like spirit cooking with Abramovic kind of stuff, and Jay-Z. It's cool if it. I mean, Jay-Z is one of my favorite rappers, and it's one of those weird things where I'm like, how does one separate art and like culture from maybe moments of deviousness versus maybe even a whole thing? I'm rambling now and opening up rabbit holes that maybe you don't even care to go down. But like, if you look at like Walt Disney or something like that, which is awesome. I'm a Disney kid like all day. There's still like levels of high weirdness. Like he was a Rosicrucian for sure. And like the 666 and the Disney little signature or whatever. I don't know if you're into this kind of stuff. Do you have anything you want to extra?
Yeah, I mean, I think that kind of, you know, especially with the big things that are affecting culture, I think that like any sort of media is going to have its subversive themes, and I think that there's, you can say conspiracy theory, but it's really like a lot of conspiracy theories are just, you know, theories and are often found to have truth behind them. You know, and then some of these people with like the whole Illuminati thing, it's like, you know, there is some global force, of course, that's controlling in some way. Do I think it's like 9 white guys at a table? Not necessarily. But do I think that there's like subversive messaging and, you know, maybe even like going into magic and how
maybe I remember reading some now that you're saying, because I'm not a huge Tool fan, but I remember there being like a song that they did where they're like, this is straight up like a magical like Crowleyan ritual, basically. I think it's like 42 and 6 or something like that, and they're just like, this is a thelemic song and here's the roots and all this stuff, and it gets like, because that's it's the double-edged sword. It's not bad or good. It's like, what happens when you tap into the imaginal spirit of people? Like, it can create, I mean, just like tarot or something. It's like, I mean, this card is dope, but it can also make you think weird thoughts, right? Or whatever. So, and I always kind of, whenever we go into this, I'm not so, how would I put it? I don't want to jump to the gun that everything's like Epstein Island nefarious. I'm also like, you know, people know that they have the capacity to influence the wills of others, but that one is that not being done, essentially. Like,
exactly.
Culture is a programming tool. Like the fact that we use letters or sounds that, you know, represent things, representational symbolic logic and all this stuff. Anyway, Raphael, did you want to chomp on that bit anymore, or did he address your query?
No. It is what you make of it ultimately anyways, you know. I've always had good experiences. I just wanted to know like what your insight on this is, if any. But yeah, anyhow, because I have your stuff open here all the time, I got to put it up on screen again. Yeah, well, Jim, you want to continue if we want to go down any lane? Otherwise, maybe want to talk about the art pieces or however you'd like to proceed.
Yeah, I mean, I heard you reference Alan Watts peripherally when you said hang up the phone on psychedelics. You don't have to tell, you know, you can plead the fifth. I don't care if you're still a psychonaut or not at some level. You know, everybody's entitled to do whatever they want. What are you still doing paintings like this, or you said you shifted mostly to the furniture side of things?
Yeah, I'm still doing canvas paintings occasionally. Definitely more on the furniture side. The the canvas art is like very it's very much like a heavier specific thing for me. A lot of narrative driven kind of stuff. Really, really deep spiritual work. So it's like it's harder in its own way. And it's very niche. Like, I think, you know, it can convey a psychedelic concept. But it's, you know, and a lot of my journey really as an artist, as a human being, has been, I was deep on psychedelics, really going.
Do you have a favorite one?
I mean, my favorite one, you know, and the one that I really still will mess around with is like psilocybin.
Okay.
You know, I went deep down that rabbit hole is like, the whole 5 grams in silent darkness to, all sorts of places with that, hundreds of hits of liquid acid in my
Oh
eyeballs.
my gosh, you're an Aries indeed. You're
Yeah,
like,
so
why
I was
not? Let's
really
go.
with it. And it was just really getting to a point where it was, it was too much. It was like kind of like I got the message and I wasn't really gaining anything from these experiences anymore. So my message kind of became to like really integrate and to, take that information that I learn and apply it to this reality. Because it's like, yes, we are infinite beings of light and soul, but we're also like in these flesh suits on this planet. So it's like, that's what we're here for. We're not here to
carry water.
Timeless beings. It's great that we can get there and we can understand that, but it's really like, for me, it's take that and and portray those same concepts in a way that is that's present and grounded and applicable, and taking those ideas. And it's just like I've never been a person into meditation, but it's like you can get to these same states through meditation. The closest I come to that is with my paintings. Sitting there with them, it's like the silent moments of my life, closest thing to that. And it's through that work that I'm able to, most of the paintings that we're looking through are done after I had already done psychedelics, after I had already gone down that rabbit hole.
It does help to open up the imagination somewhat, no? I almost want to say reactivate. That was my feeling. Even this having a, let's say, distant, faded memory of like childhood. And then you remember back like, oh, I was able to imagine all these things so easily. And at some point, to me at least, it seemed like the visual imaginative space became smaller and smaller. Became difficult for me to imagine anything. It was like having an old, not even CRT, what is the oldest technology for TV, like in black and white. Yeah. And then when engaging with these things, like at least for me, and of course with a little bit of exercise and meditation and visualization, it seemed to really open it up. But like you say, maybe there's a point to what Alan Watts said, that at least when there's no message coming through currently, there is no point in staying on the phone all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Let's put it like this.
Yeah, and I think it's like we're getting deeper and deeper into the science of how they interact with your brain, and moving into it opens up your brain from this very like materialist point of view of like, this is what's here and now, to really getting into like quantum physics approaches on reality. When you're on psychedelics and you're communicating telepathically with your friends, and you're like, did that just happen? It just happened. It's
we're all hallucinating together at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, this is this experience is a shared hallucination that we're all having. These particles. It's like the double slit experiment. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
At this point, who is it?
Right? Yeah, one of the coolest things ever. It's like the
wave particle.
Matter doesn't exist until it's observed. Like, it doesn't take form until it's observed. And I think psychedelics are great for breaking down your normal thoughts patterns and stuff, and just rewiring your brain in a way.
Yeah, I think compared to like a drinking culture, because I used to drink and smoke weed all day. I used to grow and stuff. I just trip now, basically, even though I think the temptation there to party is always there, just because once you kick down that Pandora's box, you're like, I know I can have fun this way, but then there's something. I'm going to hold it up. The magician card, he's got his feet grounded. You're up here with the elements as their constituent parts, all earth, fire, air, water. You've got all these things, and they're different vibrations, if you want to put it that way. I don't know about your ontological like map for reality. I don't even know if you're a theist or anything like that. So it's like you were talking a second ago about the material kind of reductionistic. We're getting to a point where science is kind of scratching its head, like whether it's we're zooming in so hard it's basically static, or we've hit the cosmological radiation, so we can't see past a certain time and space in terms of the cosmos larger picture or whatever. Is there any kind of, it doesn't have to be religion or anything, but is there any kind of worldview that you tend to like jam on? For some reason, I feel like you might be a Taoist given your Jupiter and Libra, but do you think, are you okay with the idea of spiritism in the sense that like things are imbued with consciousness and like what's not conscious kind of stuff? Or
this is kind of like, and this goes back to even the way I was raised, because I did secular school, and then ultimately went into Catholic school for like 2 years. Awful. Catholic's bad. Then I went into Jesuit school, which is a sect of Catholicism.
Oh, Raphael knows all about that.
Yeah, the sect there was, or the education behind religion there was amazing, because it we did, like we did a scriptures class, and it wasn't like read the Bible, that's it. But, I did read the Bible, the whole Bible, which most Christians have not done, I don't think.
For sure, like
We
real
also read
exegesis.
world religions. It's like, what does scripture mean from all the religions? What is, we had faith and sacrament. That was like going through everyone's definition of faith and sacrament. I think as far as like the view that I took away and held with that, I was like an atheist for a while just because I was mad at the church, I think. I would say I'm like very strictly agnostic. I don't know, to quote Ruth from Ozark, I don't know shit about fuck. It's like anyone who pretends like they know something about religion, I think, it's like personal experience is the best thing. I think, religion's a control mechanism to tell people what to believe, to give them some sort of, hope and, console the fear of death and the fear of the afterlife. Do I think there's an afterlife? I don't know. Do I think that energy can neither be gained nor lost? Yes. That's like something I hold to. So, it's like, I don't know. I think
You're okay with the mystery of it, it seems.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think the moral of, those religions is just like, don't be an asshole, be nice to people, try and be your best self. It's like more of a personal hero's journey. And if we can all just kind of stick to that personal hero's journey and be the best person we can be in our own ways, like the idea of sin, it's like, that's inherent. It's, don't be a bad person. Don't hurt others, treat people how you want to be treated. Do I think that there's, a big guy in the sky? Maybe. I think it's more likely that we are that big guy in the sky, with each other. And, we're kind of sucked from that collective consciousness to have a personal experience.
You're preaching to the choir. I mean, I was raised Christian. Raphael wasn't. He went to Jesuit school, but I don't think he's particularly religiously raised. So,
humanist school. It wasn't Jesuit anymore, but humanist. But I skipped religious class because I was non-denominational, so I had my own conversations during that time. But yeah, Jesuits have a big influence on this world. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny because while I was working out before this episode, but like at Planet Fitness on the bike or whatever, I was listening to Jordan Peter. Actually, I heard a thing, Rafa, I want to hear your take on it. This is totally random. I should probably talk about this after the show, but there's something called some whistleblower came out, and it's like the Immaculate Constellation stuff. Basically, it's just kind of a 3-hour deep dive with journalists. That's pretty impressive. I'm not really big into aliens and UFOs. Like I'm not against it. I listen to Bashar and stuff, but at the same time, I'm not like UFO tracking or anything, like that. Anyway, this guy on that podcast was kind of like, the government's fucked. There's power cabals that are running this shit, and it's just a house of mirrors, basically. But after that,
much for sure. But go on.
Yeah, no. But when you have someone like being like, check it out. I mean, I don't even care about that many podcasts, but it was an interesting thing. I couldn't even tell you who it was off the top of my head. But if you look up Immaculate Constellation, you'll see it's 3 parts, and it's interesting. It's well worth listening to, just as a modern human in our times. It's just like, wow, this is, if you're not into astrology, it doesn't make sense. But Pluto in Aquarius is fucking lit, and everything is kind of like, it's like a tower card moment, really. Honestly, the best way, it's a magician card where we're like, oh my gosh, it's not what I thought, and I can really abracadabra anything in a certain way. But that means institutions are going to shift. That means values and technology, obviously with AI and stuff. I'm rambling, but the point I was gonna get at is I listened to Jordan Peterson. It was like 1 Christian verse 28 this thing, and I'm not a Christian right now by any means. I mean, I defend it, I guess, intellectually at some level. Theologically, I could play with those games, but it was interesting. It's kind of like what you're saying, because I think the militant atheism isn't even that viable at this point because of the miraculousness of life itself. Like whether it's the Goldilocks kind of situation with life on Earth and all that stuff, to the nature of reality and consciousness. I think there's just so much. Like at one point, maybe in the 50s or 60s, it was like easier and maybe more in vogue to be like, screw tradition, screw these, I don't want to just take your sacrament and believe what you believe. And I understand that. But what we're getting at some level is mysteries that are ineffable, and it inculcates in certain cultures in very different ways. Like you were saying, the Islamic architecture is very different than maybe a Zen koan or something like that. But these are all ways we're trying to play with the creativity of something. I don't even know if it's like an Akash or like a noosphere or something. It feels like we're tethered to ideas. Like Terrence McKenna was like, when you think you're thinking, you're actually channeling or listening, basically. So I'm rambling. I have a tendency to do this. I'm a Sun and Moon Gemini, my bad. But yeah, you don't seem like a reductionist materialist. Like, it doesn't sound like you're, how would I put it? It doesn't sound like you're struggling with the meaning of life. You're living life practically, and then trying to bring your best self to each moment, which is probably what the ethos of every one of these cultures at some level is. Where it's like, look, chop wood, carry water, don't be a douche kind of thing, like you were saying. But then, especially with the psychedelics, I would love to see it from your perspective, just given the design mind you have, where it's like, this is a holographic machine, dream machine we're in, and there's so many shapes and stuff. It's like, it doesn't seem like chaos is a strong word, but it's like it's chaotic in a way that we can't order with our human minds at present. But whether it's AI or whatever, it's like there's so much deep level patterning going on at every level that it's kind of hard to just think it's just like a, an explosion of randomness. Anyway, I'm going to shut the fuck up. The conch is yours. If we can talk about spirituality and stuff if you want. We can geek out about other stuff if you want. But yeah, I have no, based off of your art, I would think you're obviously into psychedelics, but it doesn't like shout an ontology, so to speak. It's not like you're drawing like, religious figures or something like that. So, I think you kind of said your piece, but you could say anything you want. I mean, I've just
and I mean, I think the main point that I take away, and like kind of what I would speak on that, and back to the the Middle East architecture and the mosque. The reason that their stuff is so geometric and it's just that to portray these ideas is because they weren't allowed to have idols, so they're portraying
iconography.
Good point. Yeah. Yes, very good point.
Yeah, and so that's really what I'm working to tap on with my art now, with these pieces of furniture as sort of like these like temple moments. It's these and the imagery that I choose for it is it's because it's it's a lot of temple architecture, and it's because it's universal, and really that's what the the whole clock project, that's really the majority of what I do right now, is clocks are something like every single person in the world has a relationship to time, completely universal. There's no one who doesn't experience it. And then the geometry is something that's, it transcends language, idols, anything like that. It's a universal thing. And I think that's been a big part of the shift from these, heavily story driven canvases into these pieces, is because, I don't think art has to be popular to be good, but I think there's a power to art that people can connect with. And if I can condense the message that, you guys are so familiar with, this deeply psychedelic, spiritual in its own way message, and portray it to anyone, then there's a power to that.
I hear you.
That's a great point. In your room, living room, office space, whatever, everyone at some point is going to be looking at the clock.
Yeah.
And they're going to see your clock. That's great. Yeah.
And I had never, I mean, obviously it's a very obvious thing that you were saying, like the iconography of the Middle East is different because of the fact that they can't portray their religious figures, and it's more scriptorial and stuff like that. That will necessarily be a different petri dish than other cultures. So it's funny to see the magician card. It's like, what happens when monkeys are given this tool versus when monkeys are given that tool? And it's like, we're all still jamming on all cylinders in a sense. I mean, you've alluded to Alan Watts and Terence McKenna and stuff. So like they have very big ideas about, like Terence McKenna, like the like a teleological point, like the what's he called it? I forget, the transcendental object at the end of time or something like that, where we're like getting sucked into something that's big, in a Christian apocalypse sense, like God. I don't even know how it would be thought of. Do you have a relationship with guides or spirits or anything like that? Or are you just kind of like, no, that's hyper woo for me? There's no wrong answer. I'm just curious.
Yeah, I don't really, and even like Alan Watts and Terence McKenna, it's never been something that I've like deeply dove into in a personal level. It's just something that's been in the periphery of my life. It's like stuff like that, and like why it took me so long to get into alchemy, and that idea of being, the alchemist, the magician, is because it's presented. I have kind of have my guard up as far as just looking at like, looking at those kind of things as like absolute truth, kind of like I want to see the point of them, but I definitely approach it from like a kind of grounded perspective. Like and as far as like personal spiritual guides or anything like that, I don't
elves.
Yeah.
I said the machine elves. You might like Jodorowsky. I don't know if you've ever watched Holy Mountain. Alejandro Jodorowsky. Oh, you have? Okay. I was like, yeah, there's some psychedelic dudes who did stuff that is getting beyond culture, and it's almost like Age of Aquarius, kind of like, I mean, at some point we have to be initiated into a new mystery. Like the symbols and the culture that we're a part of now, or the past few thousand years, it's heavy under its own weight. It's kind of collapsing, and it's not adding up the same way for the where we are in the spirit of the times or whatever. And it seems like yeah, we're just looking for a new myth is a weird way to put it, because in a sense it's always the same as it ever was, but it feels like we need new iterations of that. That's why the Marvel stuff is so popular, and Harry Potter and Star Wars and all this shit. It's like we're trying desperately to fill our imaginations with something that's meaningful, but also, you know, instilling some kind of grander.
So
You know,
for some reason, and also to put it back to you, I want to ask you about this. I don't know why this comes up for me. Maybe because you spoke about the Middle East, or maybe because of your art. I kind of want to ask, what do you, it's a strange question, but what do you see in the future? Or what is it that you, let's say, wish to imbue society with through your art? Of course, I have some ideas, but please take the concept.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the concept of my artwork right now is taking something, you know, uncanny like these clocks, and, you know, on a level of like I'm really into the personal kind of home experience of them, and, you know, about, you know, it's like it's a clock, but it's not there to read the time. Like that's not what it's there for. It's there, you know, not only as something where you can not look at your phone or not look at your watch, but look at that and be kind of reminded of the power of the present moment, the power of the personal experience, the power of sitting in those states of awe and reverie. And, you know, and also drawing your brain towards the idea of looking for that awe, that wonder, that reverie, that, you know, next level of existence, that deep state of thought in the unordinary places, you know, and really just finding the moments and trying to not get so caught up in the humdrum and the programming, that kind of stuff, and just, you know, stay mindful of that sense of wonder, because I think that is important. You know, as much as I'm like, oh, I don't, you know, I'm not into the listening to Terrence McKenna for hours and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, that stuff needs to be there, and I think it's important to take that stuff in without necessarily going towards, this is the route that I'm finding this truth in, and this is my truth. You know, you're absorbing someone else's truth as your own truth. I think it's important to take in all these other truths and form your own opinion. So this is, you know, that's you know, the art with that. It's I really love the worldwide appreciability. People draw their own meanings from it, but, you know, it's something that whether you're a psychonaut seeing my art, or whether you're someone who's, you know, like one of the last guys I did a clock for, he's a pharmaceutical CEO for a pharmaceutical company, and I'm like, that was the guy in this show who was like,
he needs it. Yes,
I need this piece, and I'm like, yes, you do, and, you know.
So how, I imagine kids love this stuff. Like maybe, yeah, like you're saying, not everybody's just like on Shakedown Street in the fucking lot being like, oh my god, I want this clock. How do you find given that we're obviously psychedelic super saturated ourselves, like we don't have to come from our perspective, how do you not pitch, that's a strong word, oh my god, if I had a quote for the day, that's a strong word. I'm going in circles. It's pie episode, that's what's happening here. How are you representing this to the people who are not on that wave? I mean, how do they apprehend what you're doing? And I mean, you've done a pretty good job of saying, like, you know, life is mysterious and the fundamentals of nature can be broken down into constituent parts, and here's the geometry. But like it reminds me of the movie Waking Life. I don't know if you ever saw that. It's a really good movie where they're like, there's a sacred moment. It's like, this is a totem essentially to get you into a sacred moment. And that might be something very mind altering for somebody who doesn't do substances. So what have your experiences with like kids or like straight laced CEO pharma dudes or whatever?
I'm dealing with them a lot more. I mean, most of the worlds I'm operating in at this point are these like fine art showings, you know, whether they're a fine art fair or more like individual show. I really like the big scale fine art fairs, and I'm really like breaking into the larger fine art sphere of the world, you know, showing even in like Basel, and like I showed Art Basel last year. I just showed in New York at Art Expo New York, and that's a lot of like, you know, you have a lot of people coming through. The way that I typically, people are drawn in to it, it's very different from anything else in the fine art world. It's kind of a completely unique niche that I've carved for myself. I mean, the main things that I speak on to these people are that awareness of the present moment, and then just the concepts of time, you know, and how we view time, and everyone has this relation. Sometimes it races by, sometimes it slows down. Sometimes, you know, it's like the way that different people perceive time at different moments is completely unique. And this is, an object for your home to draw you into that awareness and draw you into that sense of just like awe, reverie, stillness, thought, suck you out of your, rat race ideology, which a lot of these people who are, more straight-laced kind of are very much in that, and it's providing that outlet. It's like someone's not going to come up and talk to me if they're just like pafooey, but it's also like, the psychedelic mindset, I think, is really spreading in culture, and people are more aware of that as an ideology and as a thought pattern. I think, whether how involved you are in the machine, it's like everyone's kind of aware of it, that it is this machine and that we're living in it. And
yeah, it's an interesting position you find yourself in, because on the one hand we have like ideologically, I don't know, woke, if you want to put it that way, or something, like hipster types who are like, fuck the system, everyone get red pilled, let's all do drugs all day. And that's not very sustainable past a point, and it's definitely not everybody's dharma or something like that. It's not for everybody. And as much as I think that we're going to be having big shifts in culture and power dynamics and institutions like money and all this kind of stuff soon, obviously with crypto and all this AI, everybody's exactly where they need to be in a sense, and it's just a matter of bringing heart and awareness, like you're saying, to the present moment. So in the Terrence McKenna, we don't have to quote him a bunch, but he's like, it's going to get weirder and weirder and weirder, and we're going to have to talk about it. So even pharmaceutical CEOs are probably trying to figure, find a little happy place, if you want to put it that way, in the moment, because it's a wild pitch ride right now, and it's probably not going to ever get slower given just the nature of post 2012 stuff. But I appreciate that you can kind of Jupiter and obviously Libra is going to be good at this. You're good at being a diplomat to kind of both camps. They don't have to just be like kids living off their truck selling burritos to go to the concert. Those are cool, like, hyper individualists or whatever, so they've got their own trip going. But at the same time, the people that are part of the machine have hearts and souls and minds and dreams and all this stuff too. So it takes the whole village to have the dream.
There are no, this whole like NPC ideology, like
I don't like that too much. Yeah,
if you think that anyone's experience is less valid than your own, then like work on yourself, open your mind up a little bit. It's like there's validity to everyone. Like I said earlier, it's like everyone's on their own hero's journey. You've got to be able to meet them where they are, understand there's people who can be in bad places, and that doesn't give them a free pass to be a pile of shit. But it's a part of their thing. You have to see the validity. It's like, especially going to that universal conscious mindset, where it's like we're sucked into our universal, or we're sucked from our universal collective consciousness into this personal human experience. So everyone is here, I think, to like find their own dharma, essentially, as you were saying.
Truth. Yeah, it's weird because I don't know if it was Bashar or who said it, but basically it's like everybody's doing their own thing to the best they can. Or best is a strong word because it's like a value thing, but it's like it's all happening. Alan Watts' whole thing, it's happening, and like we're all on stage right now, and this is what we're doing for various conditional reasons. So there's like a logic to it. It doesn't surprise me that people in the Middle East have a very like we were saying earlier, they can't draw Muhammad, so now they're doing other things. There's a very cohesive level to it, but at the same time, it's all truth. It's like people are like, what is truth? What is truth? It's like it's shouting at us. Fire has a great lyric. It's like, born in a diamond mine, but you can't see it, and like you can't touch it. It's like, we're here. It's here. It's here. It's now. It's happening. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. But then we get hung up on like culture, unfortunately, the unavoidable thing. Is there anything you want to talk about that we haven't? I know we've kind of gone through your history, what you're up to now. What are some things? Have you been dabbling? You're clearly a craftsman and playing with a lot of mediums. Are there things with AI and VR or anything like that you're fucking with? Or are you kind of like, no, that's a weird thing? Like, what are your thoughts on where the future of creativity is going as a human? All this stuff.
I think, just, I don't want to go too deep into AI, but I think, AI is a valuable tool to, which is going to change the world. It's like, you gotta see it as what it is and work with it, because we're not stopping it. I think it has its ethical uses. I think it has a place in society. I don't think we found it yet, but it's coming. It's like we can't just be like, oh, fuck AI, because it's coming. It's like doing it. It's going to be a part of culture. It's about how we use it wisely, and I'm sure there's going to be misuses of it, and I think that there's good uses of it. As far as like what I see myself moving towards, definitely more for like present stuff. I like really like the immersive art world is kind of the direction I'm going. You know, as the paintings move to physical objects in the world, my mind is going, you know, and with murals I've done, is going more towards like immersive space design. So designing structures, designing spaces of, you know, that combine different mediums, combining lights, combining technology like haptic feedback, and really just like diving into the world. And I've got a few projects that are, you know, in development, and really it's the kind of stuff that takes a team. So I'm really moving towards really team driven, immersive art, experiential stuff that's art that really like sucks you in and really really just like it just sucks you into a different world. And it's, you know, back to that thing of sucking you out of the humdrum. It's like, how do we create a space that opens up the mind and, you know, like not controls thought, but leads thought in an interesting direction.
I mean, that's what the cathedrals were supposed to be, or, you know, all these kind of sacred spaces. At one point, we're like, look, this is not there's mundane and there's sacred. I mean, they made a differentiation for some reason in their worldviews. And they were like, when you get in here, the dimensions, the echo is whatever, like the stained glass. I mean, that's the Western approach. Every culture has this. I've been to Meow Wolf out in New Mexico with my girl, not sober. That was interesting. And it was really funny because some girl, I forget her name now, but she's like a big rock star thing. She was doing a sound check, and I was like, what the heck is going on? There's like a venue in Meow Wolf. I don't know if you've ever been to New Mexico one. That's kind of what it sounds like you're talking about, where it's like these immersive installations where it's going to be a transmutational, dare we say again, the magician is it's gonna transmute you. It's gonna blow your mind. It was the little mantra, I will blow your mind. I think you're here, and dare I say, a lot of us here are on the wave of like trying to take, you know, whatever, the font and shift the font. I don't know how to explain it better than that. It's like, we've got to do it. Doesn't mean we have to redo the whole language, but it's like, it's time for a new font. And the things you're up to, the designs you're doing, the art you're doing is not only enticing to the eye, but it's also causing us to, the collective, when I say us, people, to move in a direction of thoughtfulness and awareness and aesthetic integration. I mean, that's one of the beauty and joys of being a witness to reality at all, is to be able to like appreciate beauty.
So just on that note, or on that word, I know that this is quite a daunting task, like creating a tarot deck, which I guess you'd also be great at, but I also think you'd be great at actually creating a font, not wanting to put it into, you know, on your plate. But I was just thinking, looking at all of this, I'm like, I'd be curious. You have one?
I have a font, yeah.
Oh, wow, amazing.
I mean, I've made a few fonts, but I've never actually, I've like made each of the letters. I've never actually made it where it's like, go download it and type it with your keyboard, but I've made fonts. You know, kind of my logo is, you know, a font that I made. I just made a font for my music festival. We have like an immersive art area at my festival that we've been working on. This is going to be, last year it was a total secret area. This year it's like an out in the open. It's called Phantasmagoria. And this area, you know, I made a font for it, and it's almost like alien script kind of, but still working with Arabic numerals, kind of that line between decor and language, but still legible. You know, and that touches on something that I think the immersive art is like, what draws me in my direction is taking those kind of concepts and not just having them. Love what Meow Wolf does. They're absolute revolutionaries as far as what they're doing, but also to like reintegrate ornament back into society, you know, like, to have
like not just its own little thing, but like be like, our buildings are pretty again, or
exactly,
whatever.
Yeah.
I hear you.
It's so cold and utilitarian out in the world, you know, even just, you know, going to these cities and seeing like the Art Deco inspired architecture. It's like that kind of stuff, not a cathedral, but it's like, it's ornament. That's when we've lost that that hand touch. And I think, you know, back to the idea of alchemy, it's like when humans come together and put their hands and their brains together and work through time to carve that sandstone, it imbues a certain power into these spaces. And, you know, right now we're very much not in this era of like the power of spaces. It's like we have churches and then we have these like very functional buildings. I think we need that. I think, you know, that's one of the most important parts about humanity is our ability to create and inspire awe and, you know, work together to create these things. And I think it's, you know, it's like, that's part of how I feel like it's like making this art is like the fight for the soul of humanity. It's bringing people back to that state where This world is a reflection around us, and what it is right now is not something that a lot of people feel good about. So it's how do we come back to that, where this world is working for us rather than working for a few people.
Transmutation, alchemy all day. You keep referencing alchemy. Like, are you like doing something intentionally with that, or is this like a philosophy? Like, are you like, I'm doing the Solway and Coagula all day, or like what does that mean to you? The fact that we got the alchemist card is hilarious to me.
Yeah.
So yeah, what does it mean to you, alchemy? I mean, we don't have to be like, what are the 7 principles of alchemy? Quick, it's not quite like that. But yeah, what is this? Just like an underpinning kind of vibe that you appreciate, where you're like, I'm the Mickey Mouse sorcerer's apprentice and I'm trying to make magic, or how is that to you?
It's something, and again, like from the area between magic and groundedness, it's alchemy is kind of something that I was around often, but I didn't really do a dive into it until I was commissioned a painting. I don't know if you could pull it up on my website. It's called The Path of the Sovereign, but it's that was the painting that really got me deep into the practice of alchemy, and really took it from that woo-woo ideology as something I saw it as that, into something that's like very practical. It's a very grounded approach on magic making. And it's, taking these root forms and taking simple parts and then putting them together and making them essentially, the sum of the parts is greater, or the total is greater than the sum of the parts. And this, like this painting, you kind of start, it moves through the Azoth ritual of alchemy. And essentially it's taking the dross, the poison, burning that away from human grounded experience, letting that rise up, and you're going to the Phoenix, which is the pure spirit. And you're kind of going from this approach of like, all right, humanity, you burn away what does not serve from humanity, you reach the sense of pure spirit, but then you come back from that spirit. It's something where you're not, I'm spirit. It's something where you go to that and then you return, because spirit
is how it does.
It's a circle. It's not something where it's a cycle that finishes once, or you get, and it is a process, and we're constantly spinning that wheel. But there's a very literal sense of like old alchemy, like turning lead to gold, very like scientific, calculable kind of thing.
They just did that in the Hadron Collider the other day. I don't know if you read that.
Yeah.
They turned lead to gold by accident somehow. It's like, oh
By
God.
accident.
Yeah.
Okay.
What's going on out here? And it's funny, you're just saying, I don't know if you've ever seen the visualization of pi 3 through 14 episode, but basically it's like, it's not settling. It's an infinite, it's the hero's journey. It's this fractal. It's just going forever and ever and ever. And that's what these things are. I'm glad you actually decided to pull that up and talk about it, because I hadn't even thought to do that. Where it's like, hey, talk about one of your pieces. Very Lion King. I don't know if people saw the new Mufasa, but this reminds me a lot of the OG Lion King, and even the sequel to Lion King was pretty dope, actually. Very alchemical. Yeah. So you're saying, it's not like the white bird's good and the black bird's bad or anything like that. These are just polarities within the circle of life and the dance in between those shifts. So that was your own like little initiation, you could say, into your own awakening on that front.
Yeah, that was kind of my initiation, and now it's just seeing the process. And like, I mean the very act of art is alchemy. You're putting earthen metals, pigments together, and what the image is on the canvas is greater than paints and cotton canvas. You're able to take these very like base level things and turn them into an idea and something that provokes thought, provokes consciousness, whether it's for yourself or for others. When they see it, they take something in. But it's like, this image is more than paint and canvas. It's beyond that. So that's really what I see alchemy as. And then with the furniture stuff, it's taking these cast aside, forgotten objects and a couple $100 in materials and turning them into something that's greater than the sum of the parts. It's you're creating something that evokes wonder and awe, and it's you're charging an object. You're through it's the addition of the mind into these objects. That's like what alchemy is to me.
Well said. And it's funny because it's both. It's a it's a participatory thing on the viewer's part. I mean, we're engaging. It's not just like look at the pretty stuff. It like actually is triggering, at least in the painting here that I'm looking at, triggering archetypes that are deeper than any conscious neural thing. Like these are very deep archetypes. And with the clocks and stuff like that, once again, I think geometries are like you were taught in school. Some of the Platonic forms, some of the more basic elements of the fundaments of the matrix we find ourselves in, the script of the matrix, if you want to put it that way. So yeah, you're doing cool stuff. Is there anything that I mean, you don't, this is kind of like weird Santa Claus wish list stuff. Is there something you would love to do that it doesn't even have to do with art, but it can, where you're like, oh, I wish I could do this before I die, kind of like bucket list stuff or anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think, and most of that stuff is in line with art in its own way. I think that's kind of what my purpose is. I think it's really, I'd like to really get into some like more architectural level stuff. The scale of like, yes, huge Burning Man installation, that's great, but like really integrating with culture in a greater way, and working with architecture, those kind of ideas, even if it's just like a matter of imbuing these patterns that I've found and referenced, and really just integrating that art into society, I would say, is like my biggest mission, kind of. And then aside from that, it's also like be happy. That's like a mission. It's like you gotta do that. It's like, yes, I'm here to influence culture and push myself and do all that, but I'm also like, be
Enjoy
the best.
the ride.
Enjoy the ride. Yeah, we've got to be we've got to feel good about ourselves. We've got to the best thing we can do for the world at large is to fix ourselves and to make ourselves the best version. That's the way to, I think, actualize change, is to actualize that change within yourself. And that's, you got to do that before you can ripple that out.
1,000. I don't know if you've been to Barcelona, but you were talking a little about like the I think it's Gaudi and the Sagrada
Familia.
Yeah, that sounds like something. I mean, talk about it. He didn't even see it get done, but like what you're talking about, where it's like a practical space, people can participate, but it's going. I mean, it's just like a next version of the thing. So it'd be cool to see what you're up to in the next couple of years. Not that you're not doing cool shit now, but it seems like you've got. I mean, especially with the North Node in Sagittarius, you're here to kind of you're going to be a little burning bush yourself.
This is actually from Sagrada Familia.
Oh shit! There's a thing for there.
Sagrada Familia. You could have caught me a little over a year ago, finally getting there for the first time.
I love Barcelona. It's like Paris meets San Diego or something. It's cool.
Oh my god, one of my favorite cities. I mean, you could have caught me ugly crying for 8 hours in that building. That's and that's really, he's one of my greatest inspirations as far as where I could see my art going. And he's great. He's working with huge teams for it. Obviously, stuff is being built after his death.
Posthumous, yeah.
Actualization, but like creating spaces like that are just such awe-inspiring pieces, like testaments to what humanity can do together. Because that was Gaudi that designed that, but you think about the thousands of hours, the thousands of people, the generations that have gone into creating this thing, and it's like the people in there. I mean, they're not like, what is it? Is it a Catholic church? Is it like,
technically? I mean, it doesn't feel like that.
It doesn't feel like that. It's just a testimony to God consciousness, to the power of humanity to like come together and carve something so insanely potent. And oh my God, yeah, one of my favorite buildings. That was a great pilgrimage.
Not to cut you off, I'm not sure if it relates at all, but in German, or at least in Austrian, if you say Gaudi, it actually means to have fun. Gaudi haben is to have fun. Yeah, so it's fitting.
Super syncy. Yeah, it's like that's a good example. I mean, it's a little folk is a very hard way of saying this, but I hope we don't lose our touch with this with all the AI stuff. I mean, it's futurism is cool, and H.R. Geiger's got his place and all this stuff, but we don't want to just be North Korea about it or whatever, and just like have just purely utilitarian kind of whatever chic utility, like having color, having kind of a space where we can cathartic, like you said, if you ugly cried for 8 hours in a place, you were definitely transmuting there. And it's funny that the Pi episode 314, you've got a circle from the guy we just talked about. That's the magic of that. I love this shit. I mean, it's always fun to geek out with people I don't know, but I would say we've gotten to know you a little better. And thank you so much for giving us your time and energy. Is there anything you don't want to, or that we haven't talked about that you want to talk about, or have we kind of covered all the bases?
No, I think this is great. This is yeah, just been a very organic path of thought. We've gotten to some really great places. I definitely enjoyed all the places we went. I hope yeah, I hope we can share this message with some people, you know, get some people thinking, and yeah, continue that circle, continue bouncing on it.
Yeah, if people haven't seen the pie, I mean, I don't care about pie that much, but the episode number is pie 3.14. You can see like an iteration. It creates like a Dreamweaver event, like an infinite Dreamweaver, where you just kind of track the pie with lines, like one position to the next position. So it creates this own geometry. I mean, it's not exact like Venus orbiting, you know, the Earth or whatever. Yeah, I appreciate your eye and appreciate your skill. Hopefully we meet up in real life. You're cool, obviously, gang. Even though our circles haven't met, you're in the scenes that I appreciate. So I'm glad you're doing your thing, and you've got a good heart about it. So I don't think you're too jaded, or you know what I'm saying. Maybe you don't know what I'm saying, but you're pretty down to earth and chill as far as artists go. Even though you're getting bougie with with these big deals. Congratulations,
which is good and important. You know,
Yeah.
these corporate people and so on, just like you're figuring out. And I also think, not that, you know, I'm your business consultant or anything. Obviously, I don't need that. But I think the niche you're doing for yourself is great. And I was just imagining earlier when you said Art Basel or whatever, I honestly don't know what they do there these days, but I can only imagine that whatever you're doing is going to stand out even more. And I think that's good and important, you know, to also give these type of high class people, not to use any other words, you know, a glimpse into that reality that you can interpret and show them. I think that's amazing.
Yeah, you're straddling the worlds between obviously like hippie folk, like let's sleep in the car and do drugs, to like high-end art galleries and stuff. So it's good to know that you're an ambassador for both fronts on the best sense. Thank you so much, like I said, for giving us your time and energy. Your team Rabbit Hole as fuck, doing the thing, making it work. Guys, they're out there. Find the others. Find the fucking others. People are out here doing it, raising vibrations, raising awareness, and it doesn't have to look like, you don't have to build the pyramids. You can just do very simple, practical things, and from your heart. And obviously, his story shows that, where if you just consistently follow your magic, you can do great things. Magician card. Yeah, that's all I got to say. So if you guys want to put in a last word, feel free to.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me out. This is awesome conversation. I'm happy to talk with like-minded people, and you guys have yeah, a great approach with what you're doing of spreading that magic and approaching it from all sides. And I really appreciate the conversation and the ability to share and to think with each other.
That's what up. Instagram, thank you for tuning me into him. Yay. Algorithms, my girlfriend, maybe even. Shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, all your links are attached. People go check out his stuff. Hopefully you see him at a festival or even in Basel or whatever.
All right. Thank you so much, Gavin. Thank you, Jim, as always. Thanks everyone in chat participating and everyone watching later. Check out the website, check out the stuff. We've shown quite a few things here on stream. Yeah, thanks again, and catch you all next time.